Spending on infrastructure is a key element of President Obama's $450 billion plan to get America back to work. With his take on the next steps, we bring in Jim Glassman. He was an administration official under President Bush. He now runs the George W. Bush Institute, that is in Dallas, Texas. Jim is joining us from Washington this morning. Jim, thanks for being with us. You point to these critical questions that do remain unanswered, including what the money gets spent on specifically and where it comes from. Given those two tracks, what would you like to hear from this current administration?
Well, Deirdre, I think that's the key. In other words, spending on infrastructure sometimes can be good, sometimes can be extremely wasteful. Right now, when the government doesn't have any money and has to increase its borrowing, and we've already got a huge debt to GDP ratio, we've got to watch our step. So what I would propose would be for the government not to get deeply into more infrastructure spending, but let the private sector do it. And there are two huge projects out there waiting to be done that are being blocked by the government. One is the merger between AT&T and T-Mobile, which AT&T says will lead to a major build-out of its LTE 4G network. So that's a broadband network that's going to benefit all Americans, electronic infrastructure. The second is first of all, a pipeline from Canada, the oil sands pipeline from Canada that would be tremendously helpful and would lower oil prices in the United States. According to Wood Mackenzie, that pipeline, as well as some other changes in laws that are blocking development of energy, would create 1 million jobs by 2018.
Which does bring up an interesting point, Jim.
Yeah.
Just because I'm saying, you know, as far as economic impact, the president's plan has actually received a lot of kudos, saying that it really is going to get Americans back to work and that we could even see an increase in GDP.
Well, let's be clear. You don't get Americans back to work simply by spending federal dollars, because those monies have to come from somewhere. And where they come from is either tax dollars or borrowing. And in both those cases, money is pulled out of the private sector to be used for these uses the government is directing. As I say, some of those uses might be good. For example, if there were no highway between Washington and Baltimore, and the government built a highway, that would probably increase economic activity. Yes, it would increase it for a very short period of time while people were building it, but more important, it would increase it over the medium and longer term. That's what you want to do with an infrastructure project. The problem is government is not always very good at infrastructure. That's what the economic research shows. So the question is, what's the project? And the private sector is, in almost all cases, really good at building infrastructure. So that's why I advocate letting the government should free up these two major projects, the telecommunications merger between AT&T and T-Mobile, as well as energy.
All right. Your two key points, Jim. We're glad to have them.